Hello everybody and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet of Portsmouth City Council. Today we've got some slight technical problems, so we've got sound but not vision on the webcast, and I hope that doesn't ruin your enjoyment. So welcome everybody. Just to say the usual things, that if there's not meant to be a fire alarm scheduled. So if one happens, it's real, and we meet by Queen Victoria in the Guildhall Square, and let people know if you signed in that you're signing out, so people don't come and search for you. Okay, I think then we can quickly go around the room to do introductions, but if we start with Councillor Susie Horton, would you like to introduce yourself, Susie, but also say why today is an important day?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education and Deputy Leader. Today is International Women's Day, and I would just like to put a message out there to all women that I hope they have an enjoyable day, having a bit of attention, but particularly, and I can speak for myself personally, I can't speak for everyone else, but my heart goes out to any women caught up in the conflict in Ukraine, and I think it feels like an International Women's Day that's more poignant this year because of that very thing.
Thank you, Susie. And just for everybody's information, I understand that there will be a vigil in Guildhall Square on Saturday between 5:30 and 7 o'clock, which the City Council will be supporting, so everybody is extremely welcome to that, to show our solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Okay, let's run through. Mr. Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Communities and Central Services.
Darren?
I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness.
Mr. Ashmore?
Dave Ashmore, for Community Safety and Environment.
Lynn?
Lynn Stagg, Traffic and Transportation.
Ben?
Ben Dowling, Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development.
Kimberly?
Kimberly Barrett, Climate Change and the Green Recovery.
And Jason?
Man behind the mask, sorry. Councillor Jason Zackley, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Social Care.
Excellent. Tristan?
Tristan Samuels, Director of Regeneration.
Now this is where I feel embarrassed and can't remember names. So
Ellie O'Day, Telecare and Home Safety Manager.
thank you, Ellie.
Paul Fielding, Assistant Director Housing.
Lisa.
Jane Mee, Museums and Visitor Services Manager.
Jules?
Julian Pike, Deputy Director of Finance.
Hello everyone, Christina Downey, Climate Change Lead at Portsmouth City Council.
Matt Gummerson, Public Health Intelligence.
Jane Lemaire, Employment Learning and Skills.
Anna Lynn, Strategic Project Manager, City Centre.
Mark Pebbleton, Economic Growth Manager.
Ian Maguire, Planning and Economic Growth.
David Williams, Chief Executive.
Peter Wolf, Legal.
Karen Martin, Democratic Services.
Okay, I think that's it. We have apologies for absence for Dr. Hugh Mason, who has gone down with COVID. Any other apologies for anybody who... No, I think that's it. Colleagues, any declarations of interest? There is a report from the Solent Freeport, but the advice I understand is that as I'm council-appointed representative, I do not have a conflict. Thank you very much, Mr. Bolf. Okay, record of previous decision meetings. Colleagues, are you happy with the minutes of our meeting of the 30th of November and the 8th of February? I hear no dissent, but I don't hear any acclamations. Are people happy?
Delighted.
Yes. Good. Okay. Capital strategy. Julian.
Thank you, Chair.
Julian, can you put your mic a bit closer?
Yeah, sorry. The capital strategy is reviewed and approved each year and is a rolling 10-year look forward that sets out the council's overarching capital aspirations and is in alignment with the city vision and how both capital expenditure and investment decisions are made. The short to medium term and longer term capital aspirations and their key investment principles are set out in part 1 of the strategy. Part 2 focuses on borrowing to fund the capital programme and the investing of surplus cash until it is required, along with affordability of borrowing policies relating and policies relating to the provision of repayment of debt. There are no changes to the report since the publication, and members are asked to approve both Part 1 and Part 2 of the capital strategy.
Okay. Councillor Atwell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Julian. Obviously, comprehensive 40-page report for those in the room that like to read a 40-page financial report. I know I do. Thank you for all the work on this. I've moved that I recommend we agree the recommendations set out in Part 1 and 2 of the report.
Thanks, Chris. Julian, I have a question for you. At the meeting of the group leaders looking at what might happen in terms of the local plan, one of the things that was said there has appeared in a question on full council agenda, which is about Tipner West and how any shortfall in terms of that development might be funded. Are we allowed to spread the cost of that over a number of years in a capital programme because it's more than we would have in any one year?
Generally speaking, no. Schemes can only start once all the financing is in place, so we would need to identify with a reasonable degree of certainty the financing that we would intend to use to fund that capital scheme.
So we can't do a top slice of X million for a number of years to be able to fund that shortfall?
That is something that is not what's been set out in the capital strategy as presented. The capital strategy sets out the schemes will only commence upon the identification of the resources that will be used to fund that scheme.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Julian. That's very helpful. Okay, colleagues. Anybody else on capital strategy? Is everybody happy with this? Yep, thank you. And Julian, can we record our thanks for identifying money for this year's capital strategy? We started out at, I think, minus 5 million to spend and ended up with almost 12 million in the pot. So my thanks to the work that you did for that. Okay. Okay, next, Treasury Management. And again, this will be down to you, Jules.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The Treasury Management Policy encompasses both the Treasury Management Strategy and the Annual Investment Strategy. The Treasury Management Policy is required to be approved by both Cabinet and City Council prior to the commencement of the financial year to which it relates. The coverage of the Treasury Management Strategy is outlined in paragraph 1.3 on page 75 of your papers, and the Annual Investment Strategy is included in section 4 starting on page 86 with categories of investment counterparties and their associated deposit limits and durations being set out on paragraph 427 on page 90. Changes to the recommended 22-23 Treasury Management Policy compared to the policy that was being applied and is currently still being applied in 21-2 are very light touch, with the only change being that the UK Infrastructure Bank has been added to the approved sources of borrowing available to the Council, and that's shown on page 84. There are no other changes to the report since the publication, and members are asked to approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thanks very much. Before Chris comes in, Julian, can I ask, and it's probably hidden in the report and I didn't see it, how much profit did you make last year?
When you say profit?
How much money did you make that helped support the Council's budget out of the Treasury Management function?
Well, the Treasury Management function actually has a net budget of circa 23 million, which is to meet its borrowing costs. But net investment income is circa 6 or 7 million.
Okay. So without that, we're 6 or 7 million worse off.
that's netted out against the total Treasury Management budget.
Okay, thanks very much. Chris?
Another 40-page financial report for us. Those of us that like that sort of thing. I move that we approve the recommendations in the report.
Thanks so much indeed. Okay, for any other questions, any votes? Okay, everybody happy with that? Yep, thank you very much indeed. Carbon budget approach. Christina.
Hello, thank you. I've provided a short report detailing the approach that we'll use to work out the carbon budget methodology for both the city carbon strategy and the council carbon strategy that are currently being developed. So I've provided some information here about how we'll work out the impact of our carbon actions going forward against a business as usual scenario. We've also detailed how we're going to evaluate each of our climate change actions that we'll be putting forward, including against a number of factors such as financial cost per volume of carbon saved, links to other council strategies and how they support them, and an important local co-benefits to Portsmouth and how we can support the green economy here. We've also detailed a number of earlier initiatives that we've done, which I think is an important process here. And also we've identified a number of future projects that we're definitely going to do. And we're also identifying that we will be using an independent assessment from the Tyndall Centre, which they've undertaken with Manchester Uni, which they've evaluated lots of different carbon reduction initiatives to take us to net zero in 2030. And we're also highlighting the importance of us to use funding applications to collaborate with partners here in the city and our major employers, lead on lobbying and innovation here, and act as a local hub for responsible and being an innovative landlord. The backdrop to this is that we are developing currently the council strategy that will hopefully be ready to be published in the next couple of months, and then we're together working with the Climate Action Board. That should be published this summer. And going onwards from that, everything will be published annually.
Okay. Thanks. Kimberly.
I'll keep it fairly brief because I'm hoping that this will be passed and be sent to full council so that we can have some good discussions about it next week. It's always been really important that as we're doing this process, which is the first time we've done it as a council, that whenever we go through everything that we're doing, we make sure that it's public and people are aware so they can see the process we're going through. So I just want to say thank you to Christina for bringing the report forward. Really excited with the stuff coming up that we can also show to the public, and hoping for a really good discussion at full council about it.
Okay. Colleagues, anybody else? No? Okay, thank you very much indeed, Christina. If everybody's happy? Great. Okay, moving on to health and well-being. This is in Helen's name. Hello.
Thank you, Leader. The Health and Wellbeing Board has a strategy duty to produce a strategy. Set out in appendix to the report is the strategy that was approved by the Health and Wellbeing Board at their meeting in February, with a recommendation for partners on the board, including the council, to adopt it. The report describes how the strategy fits in with other strategic plans, including the City Vision and Health and Care Portsmouth plans, describes the priorities in section 3.3 and how they were developed in sections 3.4 and 5 via a number of workshops with over 100 stakeholders attending, and then a consultation process, and we're very grateful to the nearly 500 people who responded to that consultation. And the Health and Wellbeing Board requested that the Cabinet and the Council adopt the strategy.
Jason.
Not much to add, Leader, apart from Matt's obviously just detailed that. Splendid strategy, been through many consultation stages, agreed by everybody, marvellous. I think we should all support it. Thank you very much.
Susie.
Sorry, Leader, I didn't say I was going to speak, but I can't let this one go without mentioning how impressed I am with this. And if anyone needs directing to any page, it's it's page 119 of our papers. I think it's 60 of the strategy. It's what I call the Toblerone, of course I would, diagram. But actually, the reason I wanted to just add a brief comment is I think what this highlights is the importance of our partnership work, particularly with our health colleagues, that we work really well and we should never take that for granted. The other thing is that it fits into our corporate aspirations as well as the city vision work. And the last point that I want to make is what I love about this strategy is young people become old people, and actually health is a common theme throughout all our lives, and it's really important that we keep that close partnership working.
Thanks, Susie. I've got a question for you, Matt, which is how do you think the new Hampshire-wide ICS is going to impact what we're able to do locally, or is that not part of this?
Absolutely, they are all connected, obviously, all part of a bigger system, and each of the upper tier local authorities within the ICS will be developing through the Health Wellbeing Boards a health wellbeing strategy for their area. What we're very much hoping to promote is that we start from the place-based strategies developed through the Health Wellbeing Boards, and then at an ICS level, look at what the additional value that ICS system can offer to help address the things that are better done at a wider geography would be.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm as confident as you. I think it is more likely that instead of local plans moving up to inform the ICS, that the opposite will happen. It's the ICS will then tell people below what will then happen. But let's see if we can make it work if we can. But on the strategy, thanks very much for that. Colleagues, are you all happy with that? I think the other bit about it is that, as David Williams has often said to us, actually you've got to get stuff right with children, because by the time they become adults, quite a lot of stuff is already set in their lives, and you need to get that right when they're young. Okay. All right. Thank you very much indeed. For those of us who are older, we're now moving on to Telecare. And I think I might be ordering my box quite soon. Ellie, are you going to introduce this, or Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So Portsmouth City Council supports those who are elderly and vulnerable in a range of different ways, and the private sector housing service provides several services to help people stay safe in their own home. As I'm sure we appreciate, helping people to live at home is not only financially beneficial for individuals, but also the preferred option in many cases, enabling people to remain within their own environment and community. Whereas currently the majority of older people living as a couple, in 15 years it's anticipated that 2/3 of people who live alone will be aged over 65. Helping people to feel safe in their home, knowing that they are monitored in the event of something going wrong, especially if living alone, meets a vital priority of the council and city. Nobody predicted the pandemic and its requirement for people to stay at home, and the unfortunate need for people to be isolated from their loved ones. Services provided by the council were vital in ensuring that people were not alone. Where people may be vulnerable, the City Council provide a chargeable telecare service which places technology in the home to help minimise incidents which may place someone at risk. This may be as simple as a key safe to enable relatives or carers to access the property, or installation and maintenance of analogue equipment which consists of detectors and sensors. The established in-house telecare service currently supports approximately 1,100 self-paying residents who live independently across the city. And as a life-saving critical service, telecare continued to operate throughout the pandemic. And in addition, the private sector housing team supported vulnerable residents in the spring and summer of 2020 by making additional calls to all those customers to ensure their equipment was fully working, and to offer the opportunity to check in with someone when they might have not had seen anyone for weeks or even months. And the feedback from customers about this was really positive. But in 2019, we identified a need to review the service and make some improvements. And the purpose of the service, as outlined in the report, was identified to help the customer stay safe and live independently in their own home. And that supports the corporate and city priorities. In addition, we spotted some business weaknesses outlined in 5.6 of the report, and we created a project team to deliver those improvements. Given the specialised technical nature of the hardware, software and service required, and the feedback from soft market testing, it was determined that outsourced contracts offered the best solution for the City Council and customer. However, the delivery of the service will continue to be in-house within the Council, and that involves delivering all the services directly to those residents. So the outcome from the project is, from the 1st of April, we will have a new supply for our digital equipment, a new supply for our customer management system and alarm receiving centre, a new identity and brand, which you will see a small indication of in Appendix 2. So the new identity of Safe at Home was developed, and the colours for that have been chosen as dementia-friendly colours and mirror the city's recognisable blue colouring. And the new equipment provider will have branding on the bases with a new Safe at Home identity. And led by the marketing corporate team, we're going to be doing a launch of this in a couple of weeks' time, week beginning the 21st of March, which will involve some of the things I'm about to go on to. So we can have a new website, new equipment, as I've touched on, a menu of service options as outlined in Appendix 2, and particularly want to bring to your attention the response service. So for those that require a service but don't have friends or family living locally, we are able to provide a call-out service where we can help them in the event of something happening before they need emergency services. So the timetable for delivery is, as I've said, new contracts and new service will roll out over the next few weeks, and the rollout of digital equipment will start as soon as the new contract starts, be completed by March 23, which is well within the time that the digital switchover is anticipated to happen. So the recommendations of the report are that we recognise the developments of that service, the new service offer, the new fees as outlined, and that we bring back an updated report before the end of this year to show the progress of the new service and to outline how community and voluntary groups can be used to support service users to stay safe in their home. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Ellie, anything you'd like to add?
No further comments, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Darren?
Thanks, Gerald. The pandemic highlighted the need for services like this. When people were told to stay in, many people were staying in on their own, and they needed help and support. And so services like this, and also services such as, for instance, in the area I represent in Baffin's Helping Hands, and also the Never Forgotten service, are absolutely crucial and a vital lifeline. But as Paul has said, before the pandemic, the team was looking at improving the service to update it. Gerald, your point about, and Susie, your points about all of us getting old are absolutely crucial, and various aspects of the service were frankly out of date, particularly when it comes to technology and things like that. So the need was to improve that before the pandemic, but the pandemic has highlighted that. So I'm delighted that we finally got something that's fit for the future, and will hopefully form part of us getting out of the pandemic into something approaching normal. Key also is the approach of involving community and voluntary groups. I've mentioned two, but they're not alone. The fantastic work the Hive did in this work also has to be recognised, and it's absolutely crucial that we involve our community and voluntary groups. The Council cannot do this on its own, even though we know some people always think it can. So I'm delighted that we're able to involve community and voluntary groups. I'm delighted we've updated the service, and maybe this Cinderella service may go to the ball. Certainly its time has come, and I'm happy to endorse the recommendations, Gerald.
Excellent, as long as you're not wearing glass slippers. So I think it's a hugely useful service and very valuable, and it seems to me the changes in technology have made enormous strides forward, so that I was talking to somebody who was saying that if their mother-in-law didn't boil a kettle before 9:30 in the morning, they got a phone call to alert them because she always did an early morning cup of tea, and if she didn't do one by 9:30 there was something clearly wrong. And stuff like that is really excellent in terms of providing reassurance to people. And I think the way in which we're able to provide a service for people who who haven't got friends and family locally is an enormous step forward, because social isolation is a real problem. So I'm really pleased with that. So I think it's an excellent thing to be doing. Colleagues, are you happy with this? Yep, thank you very much indeed. Local plan progression update. Ian, welcome.
Thank you. Members, two related recommendations in this report. The first is to note the outcome of the Regulation 18 consultation on the local plan. That's in Appendix A to the report. It's 120 pages or so, really. I'll draw your attention to, I think it's page 4, which is a RAG-rated review of the specific policies. That work has identified that there's a number of policy areas which people had concerns about or had a desire for more work to be done. As members are aware, a local plan cross-party working group has been set up and has been looking at those policy areas to see what more work and more opportunity can be found within Portsmouth. So the first recommendation is that members are asked to note the outcome of that Regulation 18 summary report. That further work by the cross-party working group and ultimately then by the administration, having taken the opportunity to hear their feedback, does require further time within your timetable, your local development scheme. You last set your local development scheme in July 2021 with the October Regulation 18 consultation, and then an early Regulation 19 submission in the early part of this year. As the opportunity has been taken to do further work on those policy areas, the new timetable looks at late 2022 for the Regulation 19 consultation and consequently submission of the local plan to the Secretary of State for examination, likely in early 2023. An amended LDS timetable is in 4.2 of the report. Regulation 2 is to approve that new amended LDS. Recommendation 3, the usual delegation to make minor tweaks and amendments as necessary to the broader document, which I trust is in order. Obviously happy to deal with any further questions, but I believe it's a relatively straightforward report to update the administration of the local plan process.
Thanks. Ben?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I thought I'd talk as we've got Councillor Mason off due to COVID. I think this is largely an admin exercise for us today. It's to just demonstrate that we need to change the timetable going forward. But actually, it's important that we note publicly why we're doing that. And as Ian has mentioned, it is about consultation and ensuring we have adequate time to take into consideration residents' views. We've been really clear all along throughout this local plan process that it is an incredibly complicated process, and it's a process-driven thing. We do have to go through a very specific process for the local plan, but we want to get it right, and we want it to be for the benefit of all local residents, as well as those who visit, as well as those who might build, for example, in the city. And so by approving today's local development scheme and the timetable related to it, we're therefore able to take some time to really make sure we work through all those issues that local people have come up with and brought to us as part of the consultation done last year.
Thanks, Ben. I think it might be helpful if I update people on how the cross-party working is going. Hugh Mason and I, as portfolio holder and leader, meet with people from the other groups to try to work through how we identify enough land to be able to hit the local plan target. I think we're making some progress, that there are some sites that look as if they might be able to cope with a bit more, but somewhere we're going backwards. And some members on it from different groups are happy to contribute and take an active part, while others just tend to watch and not take such an active role. But I think it has been a productive thing to be doing, and I hope that we will see the outcome of that cross-party working when this comes back to full council, when we need to do the Regulation 19 update. Colleagues, any other bits on this? No? Okay. Thanks. Mark, moving on to the Solent Freeport full business case.
Thanks so much, Leader. So it's almost exactly a month, I think, since I was here with the specific site level agreement for Dunsbury Park, the tax site. I think some of you will have seen that government has now approved the outline business case, which is great news. So that's been approved, and that means that the tax sites, our own at Dunsbury, but also the one on Southampton Water. They've now been laid before Parliament. So 21 days they actually go live, and now Dunsbury Park as a tax site is actually on the government's website. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the one at Navigator Quarter, which is the one around the Southampton Airport, the Eastleigh Airport. So that's slightly delayed, but that will also come forward. So the purpose of this report is the next stage, which is the full business case. So we're taking the opportunity to come to Cabinet today and to full Council in about a week's time to ask for approval from Council for the full business case to go forward to Government. Its deadline is the 15th of April, so it's important we're here in March. All the councils that are on the Solent Freeport Consortia Board are also taking similar reports through their Cabinet and full Council to get approval so that we're all signed up to it when it goes to Government on the 15th of April. This is a really important stage because once you've got the full business case through, that means really you are then a fully live Freeport, one of only 8 in the country for 25 years. And what it means is then that the custom sites are going live, but also we've got the benefit of the seed capital fund of 25 million, which comes to us, 4.5 million of which goes to Dunsbury and some to the port. And then we've also got the benefit of the rates retention. And you'll see in the appendix to this report, you've got a copy of the Memorandum of Understanding, the draft for that, for the business rates retention, because that's the big prize, really. It's about, at a rough estimate, almost £500 million of retained rates will be available to authorities across the Solent. They'll be pooled, and then we can borrow against them. And the other thing that this report makes clear is that Portsmouth's in a very important position here. Not only have we got a custom site at the port, we own Dunsbury as a tax site, but we're also the accountable body. So the recommendation really is to basically for this to go to full council and to delegate to the Chief Exec and the Section 151 officer in consultation with the Deputy Leader because the Leader is conflicted because he's a Director of the Solent Freeport Consortia Company, to approve the Solent Freeport full business case on behalf of Portsmouth City Council and to see it submitted to central government following consultation with Section 151 and monitoring officers of each of the tax sites. Thank you very much, Leader.
Okay. I think just one piece of information, if it's of help as well, is to say that we now have a chair of the Solent Freeport, who is Brian Johnson, who is therefore stepping down as chair of the Solent LEP. But we know Brian well, and we know that he will do a good job, and that will add to the viability of the Freeport. I'm just to say thanks for. I think it's been a very useful piece of work to get it this far, and I'm really pleased that that's happened. So, colleagues, are you happy with this to go on to full council? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Regeneration City Centre, Tristan.
Hi, I'm going to do that one today.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. So we've just brought a report forward really to update Cabinet on the progress that we've been doing in the city centre and with some recommendations which I'll come back to. So obviously Ian's just spoken to the local plan and we're working with colleagues on that. We've been working on a master plan planning application which will be coming forward in spring. Economic growth colleagues are working with retailers and on the high street and with the high street task force to address some of the issues that the sort of commercial road in the area is facing. We've completed a market move and there's various other areas around that we're going to be working on. In terms of land assembly, property colleagues have recently completed on the Delancey purchases, so we're now moving on to looking at meanwhile uses and asset management for those. So we'll be bringing recommendations forward around them. We've also got an active engagement strategy and we're looking at how we might deliver the long-term wider development proposals as well. So the recommendations are that the Cabinet note the progress on the land assembly, the work done in the economic growth area, the planning application, and then 2 delegated authorities, one on meanwhile use and one to continue negotiations on the delivery strategy for the wider development.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'm sorry, I'm going to see if I'm going to suggest an additional recommendation. So, colleagues, what I'm going to suggest is that number 6 recognises that changes to the way retail operates are a national issue, but local residents want to see a stronger retail offer in Commercial Road and the City Council will work with landlords and retailers to do everything it can to improve the shopping offer. I don't know if we're going to be successful, but I think we should make every effort possible to try to make sure that the shopping offer is as strong as possible in Commercial Road. That's what people expect Commercial Road to be. Tristan.
Leader, that sounds fine. It fits well within our economic growth strategy, and we're happy to support that.
Okay. I just think we need to be publicly saying that we're wanting to make sure that the retail offer is as strong as it can be. Colleagues, would you be happy with that amendment? Okay. Okay. Thanks very much indeed for this and all the work that's going on. We need to make sure that the city centre is as a really strong offer, and I think for the first time probably in a generation we have the chance to be able to do that, and to have a really good mix of cultural offer in the city. And maybe actually we need to have an amendment about specifically looking about what the cultural offer is there as well, so that we've got a particular work stream for that. Ben, I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Do you want to come in there, Leader?
Well, yeah, let me just go through my peregrination for a little bit longer, because I might think of other things as we go. So I think there is stuff that we could think about in terms of lending library in the city centre, particularly having a lending library where families go. It was hugely successful in Southsea, moving the library to Woolworths. And bringing people into a shopping location because of that. We've struggled always to look for Jane's Sherlock Holmes experience, and so that she can wander around in a deerstalker. But it seems to me we have a cultural offer is a really important part of it, and that may be in cinema or whatever. But I think we might need to do that. But it seems to me we've got the chance now with owning the Delancey land, owning Sainsbury's, buying the bits in between. We've got the best chance we've had in a generation to get something to happen in the city centre where there's been dereliction and decay for too long, and we really need to seize this opportunity with both hands. And so I think it's an incredible opportunity for the city. Ben.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think we've been really clear as an administration the need for culture to be at the centre of our regeneration plans going forward. I think there are two particular documents in the public pack that I think are worth noting. I'm sure that there's a lot of paperwork here, but for the easy read options, there's Appendix A, which is a benefits table, and Appendix B, which is a kind of a leaflet type thing, which nicely highlights all the work going on across the city centre. It's very easy for us to get very focused on City Centre North and the Tricorn development, which is very important. And obviously we've seen that essentially we've been on hold for the last 20 years. That's a long time, as you say, a once-in-a-generation opportunity now. And the council's been working hard to bring partners together and bring the work forward. I once had it explained to me that the point of the regeneration team is to think about the future rather than today. But actually I think we're now at the stage where the future is becoming today, and we can start to see some of these come to fruition. So I'm very much supportive of the recommendations and of your additional recommendation. We've got real opportunity here, and it's good to see this coming forward in the public realm, especially with the green sustainability credentials at the heart of it as well.
Okay, so I'm kind of thinking adding a recommendation 7, which is specifically to make sure that the Regen team work very closely with the culture and leisure team to make sure that the cultural offer is strong here. But actually, looking at the city centre, it's an area where educationally we're not brilliant, and actually in terms of health outcomes we're also not brilliant, and whether we need a specific thing about working with the Children, Families and Education team to make sure that we have something that's designed for young people to be able to make a real difference in young people's lives all the way through, because it'll change their lives when they're adults as well. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but Susie, I don't know, what do you think?
I think what you're highlighting is the fact that cross-directorate working
Indeed.
is really, really important, and I I think that actually there's a flavour of that in here, that actually it is about culture, it's about educational opportunities as well as the economy, etc. So the spirit of what you're saying, absolutely agree, but I think it's already happening, but whether you want to formalise it more than leader, then that's fine.
I quite like to formalise it.
I'm gathering that, yeah.
So can we add a number 7 that there's particular work to be done with Cultural Leisure and the Children's and Families Directorates to try to make sure that this is culturally led and young people led development as well would be good. Okay. Anybody else want to bid in to join the party? Okay. All right. Colleagues, are you all right with that, everybody? Thank you very much indeed for that. Museum strategy, Jane.
Thank you, Leader. Museum strategy is a central document for describing how the museum service will go forward over the next 5 years. It's one of the documents required for accreditation, which is the national benchmark for museums in England, and it will also underpin our application for National Portfolio Organisation funding with Arts Council England. The application deadline comes up in May. The museum strategy was presented to the Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Economic Development at the meeting of 16th of November and approval given for public consultation. Work on the strategy started some time ago and there was some consultation but not very much and not enough by council standards. The consultation was undertaken by the Audience Agency during January 2022. It comprised a short survey and 15 interviews. We received 1,612 responses to the online survey, which I was very pleased with. And the main focus of the consultation was on relevance and inclusivity and participation. We didn't ask people to comment on every single aspect of what we were proposing, just the things that we felt were most important. And the details are shown in the Audience Agency report, which is attached as an appendix. So the consultation, it was very, very wide-ranging and informative. And there were some key things that came out, and it was very pleasing to see the alignment with some of the consultation with things that we were wanting to do. So, for example, we have an aspiration to work in partnership with communities, to work with them rather than for them. And the survey indicated that the most popular way people would like to be involved with us was by deciding what should be on display and assisting with exhibitions. So there's a really nice alignment there. And also, the online survey indicated that people largely feel welcomed by staff and volunteers and feel that the museum is relevant and relatable to. But at the same time, there was a recognition that some communities are underrepresented and possibly invisible. And again, this is something that museum strategy aims to address. So due to the alignment between strategy and the views we obtained through consultation, I'm not proposing any further changes to the museum strategy, but just to run with it so we can actually get on with the implementation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Ben.
Thank you, Leader. As Jane's mentioned, it's already come to my portfolio meeting, and I was very supportive, and the consultation has kind of borne that out. And actually, this is a really good example, and probably the third example in this meeting, of how we're putting residents at the heart of our decision making and wanting the services we provide and the programs and the projects that we deliver to be very much resident orientated. For a long time, museums have this kind of stigma around them being for academics and, well, for yourself basically, Leader.
Old white men.
But actually they need to be relevant to all local people and to visitors from wherever they come. So I'm really, really pleased with the strategy that's coming forward, and I think it will really aid in our focus moving forward for the museum's service.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ashmore. No. Okay. Oh, Lynn. Lynn, my apology.
I find this really exciting. And particularly, I like, as Ben has said, about involving local residents. The consultations, so wide-ranging, is really excellent. And being inclusive and reaching all parts of the city and society, I think, is very important. Now, I was brought up, as you probably know, in Swansea, and the museum there was described by Dylan Thomas as a museum that should be in a museum. It was that dire. And I'm going back a long time. And museums can be very dry. And the people we need to get in very early on, and somebody mentioned it earlier, is children. And now, as I think a lot of you know, I worked until the pandemic as a volunteer at the Mary Rose Museum. And the two things that really caught the children's imagination were hands-on stuff and interactive. And they were brilliant. And we would have tables, and they were replicas of things found in the Mary Rose, but somebody there, and then they would be asking questions. You know, you'd offer to do a very quick amputation, you know, using on the surgeon's table, which they thought was quite amusing. But that sort of thing, they got involved in it. And I think that's the sort of thing that we need to do to get more children in, because once you got the children, you got them for life. And we've also got, I like the idea of all the ethnic minorities we've got, and working classes, because, I mean, working classes make a huge proportion of the history of Portsmouth, particularly around the dockyard. So their history, building on what Margaret Foster did with Mudlock's book, etc., and her research with local people. So I think it's really exciting. It's the way forward. Brilliant.
Okay, thanks. Darren.
Thanks. Aside from agreeing with every word Lynn said on that one, I think the other interesting thing is it dovetails very nicely with your extra recommendation for the regeneration of the city centre. In this document is mentioned the box in Plymouth, which is a museum for the city, which is highly interactive, very forward-thinking, and encompasses many, many of the things that is in this strategy. It's also part of the city centre and part of the city centre development in Plymouth. And I think with your extra recommendation, Gerald, this and that dovetail very nicely, and we could potentially have something very, very exciting that covers the whole city, not just parts of it, and that's very good for the future.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh, Kimberly.
Just want to say this report was really interesting. Not many people may know, but I'd done my degree in maritime archaeology. In the final year, I had to choose two specific topics to sort of specialise in. So one was Austro-archaeology, and the other one was museum management and studies and strategy. And this report is such a good report. It reminds me of my degree, seeing all the things that you're trying to push forward with, increasing footfall, working with communities. It sort of, you know, it warms my heart to be able to see that happening in this report. But, you know, and also talking about the objects that you want to bring in and have the higher loan sort of objects. I think that's a really good idea. But yeah, no, I just want to say it was a really good report. We have some excellent museums in the city for all different things, such as the D-Day Museum, the Portsmouth Museum. We have the Mary Rose Museum as well, and in the dockyard. So we've got these really good museums, and it's really good to know that we've got a really good strategy going forward to support them. So thank you.
I think that sounds very big for my talk.
No, Jane, as somebody who is antediluvian and may well end up as an exhibit in a museum at some point, thank you very much for this. Colleagues, I gather people are happy with this. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Section 75 arrangements with Portsmouth CCG. David?
Thank you. Yes, apologies from Helen. I guess this is some of the nitty-gritty, really, that brings to life the Health and Wellbeing Board strategy that Councillor Horton and Councillor Fazakerley endorsed earlier. And I think it's the nuts and bolts that also facilitate that partnership working with the NHS, which is so important. So the first part of the paper just gives an update in terms of what we've been doing over the last few years in terms of strengthening our integrated working. I'm very pleased to say that the white paper that came out a couple of weeks ago on integrating health and care makes a specific reference by way of case study to some of the work that we've been doing in Portsmouth, which is an encouraging endorsement. The Section 75 agreement really is a process by which we can have collaborative arrangements with our partner, the NHS, and enables us to undertake pooled funding, which in turn enables us to do things in a far more integrated way, enables us to have greater transparency about how the Portsmouth Health and Care Pound is spent and make sure that we deploy that in the best possible way for our residents. You're probably aware that there is a bill passing its various stages through the Houses at the moment for health and care reform. It will lead to the establishment of the Integrated Care Partnership and the Integrated Care Board, and the CCGs, the commissioning groups that we've known, will disappear. That's been delayed somewhat. The current date for enactment is the 1st of July, but it's still not through all of its stages. We're very keen to make progress with the refresh of the Section 75 agreement, not only because it gives us a wider range of activities where we can develop our integrated working, but also the fitter condition we are in when we transfer into the new health and care regime, the better we will be placed to support the work in Portsmouth. And I think this is really important. The work is very nearly complete, but you'll see in the recommendations there that you're asked to delegate authority to finalise, because we've still got one or two areas that we're working on. So I think the development of the agreement is important, both in terms of the robustness of the relationship. I think also, though, the way that we're trying to broaden it in Portsmouth also demonstrates our commitment to the wider determinants of health. And for a city like Portsmouth, although I'd argue for anywhere, attention to the wider determinants of health, not a focus necessarily on the acute side or whatever, is really important, and it comes back to those very principles that you've just endorsed in the health and wellbeing strategy. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, David. Jason?
I think David, sorry, am I on? Yeah, I think David gave a very clear outline there and background for people. I mean, I think like the health and wellbeing strategy earlier, this report's due to be welcomed. It's been supported by numerous consultations throughout our partners, and there's been a heck of a lot of input into it. I think over the last 2 years, the COVID pandemic has quite naturally given a great emphasis on public health to people, and it's clearly in the spotlight, despite the current occurrences that are going in other areas of global concern. And I do appreciate the concerns for local authorities, and I certainly share those, but what we're looking at today, and I say that in regards to the creation of the new ICS, and I think they were touched on earlier, but what we're looking on today is the actual report that's before us, and I say that we to support those. It's got some good points, and it's up to us as members and officers here to fight the corner of Portsmouth City Council, as I'm sure lots of other local authorities are with the new ICS that's coming in. But for today, no problem with the report, and I think we should endorse it. Thank you.
Okay, I think I have significant worries about where things are going. I think we know, and we have really clear feedback from clinicians and people within health, that the really close working relationship between the City Council and the NHS through the CCG bears really positive results. We know that from the paramedics, they tell us loud and clear that if you're a Portsmouth resident and you're coming out of QA, you will come out quicker if you live in Portsmouth as opposed to Hampshire, and you will get a better package of care to support you in your home in Portsmouth than you will in Hampshire. Now, I've got a real worry that us being merged into a Hampshire-wide scheme will mean that disappears. We've worked really hard to keep a very close relationship between the health and the City Council for many, many years, and it has really borne fruit in the way in which we're able to provide services. I have a real worry that a Hampshire and Isle of Wight-wide service will lose that focus on the needs of the people of this city. So David and I met with people from the Integrated Care ICS, Integrated Care something system, and I had 3 questions for them, which by the end of the meeting remained unanswered. So my first question was, what is the Portsmouth voice on your board? Answer, there came none. Second, how, in terms of choosing people on the board, do Portsmouth have a voice to choose people onto the board? Answer, there came none. And finally, because we're a democratic system, I asked where either Jason as portfolio holder or myself sat within their system, and they have no answer. So I have a real worry that we will end up with much worse outcomes for local residents from something that is meant to pull together health and social care, but actually here will do the exact opposite. And that's not good for residents of the city. So we will continue to work. And actually, my thanks to David. David is as a chief executive, knows and understands the health economy better than almost anybody else as a chief exec in Hampshire, and therefore has great respect. So my thanks, David, for what you've done. Jason.
Just to come back, I mean, I said I shared the concern, and we've spoken, yourself and David and I, and out of other health officers in the council about this. I'm not disputing that. What I'm talking about is this report itself. It's kind of it's separate, but not a separate issue, so to speak. The report, I think, is fine. The concerns that people have highlighted and are continuing to try and battle for, I think, are sort of a somewhat separate issue. I mean, we have what we have. This is being imposed on us nationally, as it is with lots of other local authorities as well. So we're right to try and fight our corner, but for the purposes of today's report, I think the report's fine. It's just the implications of what may come through the new ICS.
I completely agree, Jason. I think you're absolutely right. David.
Yeah, one of the changes that's taken place to the bill since we met with the chair and chief executive, Gerald, is that the bill now contains provision for directly elected members to be on the board of the Integrated Care Board. Whether that will survive the rest of the passage of the bill, I don't know. It was an amendment in the Lords. We have a meeting tomorrow at officer level to start talking about representation on both the partnership and the board, and I will be making the case both for Portsmouth and for local government at that meeting.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Because health requirements for people in Alresford are very different from health requirements for people who live in Portsmouth. And when they choose people from across Hampshire, Alresford tends to get quite well represented and Portsmouth not so much so. Okay, colleagues, you happy with that? Because this report is about getting us over the next few months. Okay, everybody happy with that? Thank you. Violence against women and girls safety audit. Now, who is here? I'm looking.
Supposed to be Bruce. Do you want me to go and find him?
No, I think, David, you're going to introduce it.
Okay. Well, as I say, this is just a further report to the Cabinet based upon the outcome of community safety surveys. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of work to try and join up with the rest of the work going on with violence against women and girls. So this one here is in response to the council meeting on the 7th of December 2021 about the safety audit. So this one is about the recommendation at the end of it is for a further report to Cabinet with an update on the outcome of the said community survey. So that's the report, which is the survey, which is plain in there to see. And it's appropriate that it comes here, I think, on International Women's Day. It's just showing some of the work we're doing to try and improve our understanding of the issue of violence towards women and girls, as well as what we can do to try and improve the situation in the city, which is obviously a very serious issue. And there's a lot of work and a lot of projects going on towards this end around the city and around the country. We've got the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police and Crime Commissioner Donna Jones doing projects on this, as well as our local member champion Councillor Kirsty Meller doing things on this. So Cabinet should be pleased to approve this going forward, to help keep things joined up and enable us to gain some new insights and to show women and girls in Portsmouth that they are being heard, and more importantly, they're being listened to. As it says in the report, dealing with this issue shouldn't require women to have to change their behaviour, as the problem doesn't lie with them. And we are, or at least should be, past those ancient ways of thinking. So yeah, I'm happy to suggest this goes forward.
Thank you. Susie.
Dave actually said what I want to say, but I want to say it again because I don't think we can hear it enough, that point in 3.1 that women should not require to change their behaviour needs to be felt as well as heard, and that is the key line in all of this. Of course, I welcome all the work that everyone's doing in terms of the research that we're doing, the work we're doing, but actually until people really genuinely focus in on that women should not be required to change their behaviour, all of this is just academic. So I just wanted to highlight that, as Dave says, particularly on International Women's Day.
Okay, thank you. And I think there's been some good work that's happened to make people safer. So cameras in taxis and private hire, lighting levels. I went to the induction of new street pastors, as volunteers out on the streets. But actually, it's often in people's homes where women are at risk, and we have to make sure that it is absolutely understood that that is unacceptable, both now and ever, but it is entirely unacceptable for people to be at risk in their own homes from often members of their own family. So I'm happy with this to go forward. Colleagues, are you okay with this? Yeah, okay, thank you very much indeed. Moving over, skills strategy review. Jane.
Thank you. This is an information-only report requested by Councillor Horton as our portfolio holder. As individuals will be aware, the Skills and Labour Market Strategy was launched in November 2020, slightly delayed from our original plan of March 2020 due to COVID. We originally focused on three themes of Inspire, Integrate and Partner, but we added in an additional theme of Respond during 2020 to acknowledge the challenges for businesses under COVID. In the first year of delivery, the skills strategy has had some significant impact despite a slightly more difficult year than perhaps we anticipated, and we have much to celebrate. As of last month, we have delivered 2 remote Future Portsmouth events, which allows us to engage with the skills sector, with our local businesses, and to hear from the leader about plans for Portsmouth. And this is a very popular event, which we're keen to return to a face-to-face in 2023. Portsmouth City Council have supported the ESF updated project for the Apprenticeship and Skills Hub, ensuring that free independent advice for businesses continues to go through to the end of 2023. Unemployment programmes have sadly grown significantly over the last year. In partnership with DWP, we supported, as a council, over 800 adults into work last year, and our Restart programme, which started in July 21, is currently supporting 1,113 adults who are on universal credit, and that programme alone has supported 174 adults into sustained employment. And that's supported in partnership with a public health funded post that focuses particularly on the health and wellbeing barriers that stop people going into work. Programmes like Kickstart, where we acted as a gateway for our local businesses. At the time we went to publication, we were on 282 starts, 52 which were hosted internally within PCC. That's actually up to 324 with 61 internal starts as of this month. That ends full starts at the end of this month, but that programme has supported a significant number of young people into work. We have supported projects across the area, including the Strategic Development Fund, which allows a real focus on skills around marine, digital and net zero, which are key areas for our city. And that has now been extended through to December 22, allowing our skills providers to get more support to be able to in turn support our businesses. and the council has transferred over £260,000 of our levy, our apprenticeship levy, to support local businesses to deliver on apprenticeships across the city. We have some other lovely projects, including the My Future in Portsmouth Youth Hub, which was established in March 2021. That's funded by DWP and delivered in partnership with Children's Families and Education to support young people 16 to 24 who are on universal credit. And in additional, other projects support the skills and labour market strategy, including a Children's and Families and Solent-led jointly funded role for a careers and enterprise advisor to further support the linked progression work from schools and the development of the career strategy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Susie.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. I did ask for this to come here because I think actually sometimes the skills stuff seems a bit dry, but when you actually drill down and look into the impact it's having on individuals' lives, it's something that we should be really proud of, and what Jane does with in partnership and across her teams. And although it sort of straddles Councillor Downing's portfolio and mine, I'm really proud that it actually sits slightly tilted towards education, because skills, as we know, is not just about jobs in the economy, it's about changing people's lives, and the links are made again with health, mental health, but also aspirations. And I'm really pleased that Jane and her teams really engaged with the Aspirations Week, because it was a real opportunity for us to showcase the importance of that, not only in terms of outcomes for jobs and employment, but also just leading, full and flourishing lives. And that was really apparent. Jane's listed a lot of the things that I had listed here, but wherever possible, I do try and actually go and visit these things so I can actually meet the people who are impacted by the decisions that we make in this room. And we can definitely say that there are many, many lives being changed because of the hard work of Jane and her teams. And my final thing is to thank those cabinet members who got sick and tired of me asking about trying to ask their officers for kickstart places. We should be very proud that we've had over 50 people, young people, who have got into employment through that programme. So thank you very much for that.
Brilliant. Okay, colleagues, anything else? Thank everybody involved in this. So really important work, which, as Susie says, does transform people's lives. Okay, the last thing on our agenda is Ravlin Group, where we're operating as a company owner. Peter, do you need us to stop and start again? No, you're fine. Fine, okay. So, Tristan, Ravlin. And I'm sorry, I've got to change the recommendations I'm going to suggest, just because it's you, Tristan.
That's anticipated as these days. Thank you, Leader. Primary focus of this report really is to streamline the process and ensure that companies are not slowed down by, accidentally, obviously, by unnecessary governance. But you may want to change some of these recommendations afterwards. The paper builds on the good work done by the legal services and obviously the good practice advice we've had on how to run council-owned companies. The report notes the proposed future changes for the group company directorship. Just for your information, it delegates to the director to make some of these changes along with the monitoring officer where these involve council-owned, employees. For clarity, that does not include any external directors or non-exec directors, which would still be a function of the shareholder. Part of the reason for some of these changes are the opportunities a company like this provides for upskilling and continued professional development for some of our young, upcoming, talented staff members. Thank you.
Thanks. Tristan, the only change I was going to make was in recommendation 2, which delegates authority to the Director of Regeneration in consultation with the leader and the Council's monitoring officer. I was going to suggest that we add in not just me as leader, but also the other group leaders. I think it's best to try to operate on a cross-party basis if we can. Would that be all right?
If you insist, Leader.
I do insist upon cross-party working, if we can. But my colleagues may, of course, completely disagree with me. Colleagues, any comment? Ben?
No comments in relation to your additional thing. I'm all for cross-party working, of course, Leader. But actually ensuring that Ravelin can move in a way that is in tune with the market is really important in terms of how we deliver that housing mix that we've talked about. We know how important it is for council-supported housing in the city, and I think that's got cross-party support and has done for a long time in Portsmouth. But actually, there are other groups and communities in the city that also need housing. We're a growing economy, a growing city with a growing population. In order for us to have an impact on the market and act in that market, we need Ravelin to be able to move in such a way that, as Mr. Samuels describes it, certain bureaucracy doesn't necessarily get in the way or impede that, whilst obviously including democratically elected people like yourself and indeed other group leaders.
Okay. I think this is really useful next steps in terms of building on Ravelin, and I think the next thing we will be looking forward to is a report about whether Ravelin will be the developer to build out Site B at the Horatio and Leamington development, which is the private sector bit, because the rest of it is going through the housing department, and whether Ravelin is the developer for the private building on that site as well. Then we'll look forward to seeing that as something that we can get our teeth into. Okay, colleagues. Anything else on that, or are we all happy with that? Excellent. Okay, what have I done wrong? No? Well, it's a long list, but... okay, colleagues, thank you very much indeed for your time today, and enjoy the rest of it. Thank you.